But first, there's been many distressing protests on our streets lately, but almost nothing quite to match what happened on Sunday. Large and rowdy demonstrations in Sydney and Melbourne, not with sympathy regarding Palestine, but many mourning a dead terrorist boss, someone directly responsible for the slaughter of thousands, Jews, Christians and Muslims. Here they are. Sheikh Hassan. You saw them there. Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah, killed in a massive Israeli airstrike, was not an innocent civilian. He was the undisputed leader of a terrorist organisation. He was killed in an airstrike on the Hezbollah headquarters, where again those killed with him were not innocent civilians, but fellow leaders of a terrorist group designated as such under law here and in many countries around the world. Now, it's one thing to argue that our government does, as they do, that Israel should choose better ways to defend itself, although I reckon the Israelis get far more right than they get wrong. But it's completely unacceptable for Australians to go out into the street to commemorate the leader of a terror group or to venerate his death. For one thing, it's against the law to display terrorist symbols such as the Hezbollah flag. For another, Hezbollah's been raining missiles down on Israel for years, and countries under international law have an absolute right to self-defence against those who've been proven to do them harm. Now, frankly, we've been far too soft on these who've routinely been disrupting our streets since the October 7 atrocities. Nearly all these protests have had elements of anti-Semitism. Some have been pro-terrorist. On that day of infamy, October 9 last year, the police took no action against the protesters on the forecourt of the Sydney Opera House. The vast majority, almost all of them, whom were chanting anti-Semitic abuse. And no action either against the hate preachers who've been stirring up trouble ever since.
To the invading Jews we say, by Allah, the day you will be kicked out of Palestine is coming. The trees will speak, the stone will speak, and they'll say, "O Muslim, O believer, there is a Yahudi behind me, come and kill him."
صفة من صفات اليهود هي أنهم شعب متعطش لسفك الدماء.
But finally, it seems, after the weekend's events, these anti-Semitic pro-terrorist protests have gone too far. Even for weak Labor governments, frightened of the Islamist vote in some of their own seats. From the Prime Minister down, today there have been warnings that it's illegal to support a listed terror group.
We do not want people to bring radical ideologies and conflict here.
It is utterly unacceptable. It is utterly unacceptable for anyone to be showing support for this proscribed terrorist organisation.
Victorian police say they've referred yesterday's protest to the Federal Police for prosecution. And we've learned late this afternoon the Federal Police are expecting at least 6 reports of crime from Victoria. Even Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke, normally an apologist for anti-Israel protests, has said that non-citizens demonstrating in favour of a terrorist group risk having their visas cancelled. Not will get their visas cancelled, mind you, just that they run the risk of this happening. So we'll see what comes of this. My fear, though, based on past form, is that Labor's going to talk tough, but they won't support the talk with tough action. Still, even rhetorical condemnations, better than the impotent hand-wringing was seen mostly from governments, particularly the federal government thus far. Today, the Victorian Premier even managed to condemn anti-Semitism without also mentioning the false flag of Islamophobia in the same breath.
I want to say particularly today to Victoria, Melbourne and Victoria's Jewish community that we stand with you at this incredibly difficult time. Stand with you and reiterate that there is absolutely no place for anti-Semitism in our community. Absolutely no place.
The latest Israeli strikes to wipe out most of the Hezbollah leadership are the next escalation in Israel's increasingly effective war against those pledged to its destruction. There were the surgically executed strikes against thousands of individual Hezbollah operatives via the booby-trapped pages and the walkie-talkies. Now there's been the precision bunker-busting strikes against the senior leadership. As well today, there have been massive strikes against the Houthis in Yemen, who've not only been attacking shipping in the Red Sea, but also launching missiles into Israel. These Israeli strikes, it should be said, have dwarfed the pinprick Anglo-American air raids against the Houthis because Israel is serious about defending itself in a way that almost no other Western nation these days is. Hamas, Hezbollah and the Houthis, of course, they're all proxies for Iran, Israel's sworn deadly enemy that's on the threshold of nuclear weapon capability. What the Israelis have done is send a clear message to the Ayatollahs that you can no longer attack Israel with impunity. You hit us, we'll hit you back, only much, much harder. And frankly, the only way to deter deadly aggression is with massive shows of strength. Strength is the only language a bully understands. It's the only thing a dictator will respect. As former SAS officer Andrew Hastie often warns the Australian Parliament, weakness, he says, is provocative. If there is to be peace in an increasingly dangerous world, it will only be because the West's challengers know there's no easy win, and that an attack on freedom anywhere will be regarded as an attack on freedom everywhere. There's no end of the lessons here, lessons particularly that the Australian Government needs to learn too, and fast. It's now incumbent on all of us, we in the media in particular, to follow through these police referrals to report what arrests, if any, are actually made. After those protests yesterday, we need to keep our governments honest, and police too, and then pursue the Prime Minister and Tony Burke as to those threatened visa cancellations. Because this is a test for the Albanese Government. Are we a fair dinkum nation of the West defending the values of democracy, or are we fast becoming, under Labor, a safe haven for terrorist sympathisers?